Welcome to the Genesis of Doctor podcast, where we're taking a journey through the time and space of the history of Doctor Who. I'm Joy,
And I'm Tris.
and for today's episode, we're finishing up season 5 with Fury from the Deep and The Wheel in Space. I don't really have strong opinions on either of these.
I actually have quite a bit to say, I think, but I think more of my opinions are on Wheel in Space over Fury from the Deep, but we'll start with Fury from the Deep. Um,
Yeah,
I think it was last episode when we talked about expectations going into this. I mentioned Fury from the Deep sounds like it would be a Sea Devils episode nowadays, but obviously
yeah,
this was before they introduced the Sea Devils. Um, But I gotta be real, this was a really cool story. Like, I didn't, like, love it or anything. It wasn't, like, anything like, super special, but I liked this story. I think the supporting cast was just the right amounts of insufferable in terms of stopping the Doctor from getting things done quickly. And
yeah,
there was just kind of a lot of silliness to it all as well.
yeah. I think this story does, like, the atmosphere very well.
Yeah.
Like, the story is pretty simple, but, like, the atmosphere of, like, how creepy it is and, like, not knowing who you can trust and stuff, like, I think that is done very well.
Mm-hmm. Also, both of these stories share a controller that kind of just loses it, to be honest.
Yeah.
Although a little bit more so in Fury from the Deep. This man is so afraid that everybody's trying to usurp him, trying to take power away from him. He just goes insane. It's kind of crazy, his descent into madness, actually being something that's entirely separate from the threat that's going on. It just then makes him susceptible to said threat.
Yeah. I found it a bit funny how, like, you can tell why Lester Stewart stood out from the rest because, like, immediately they're just back to, like, crazy leaders that don't get along with the Doctor.
Incompetent ones at that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then, like,
no.
when he's taken over by the seaweed, he's like, he still isn't really acting that much weirder.
No, it's not until he's like fully green and kidnapping Victoria that he's like he's just as weird as he has been the past couple episodes until that point.
Yeah.
So I don't know, sleeper agent. He's more so in a state of hypnosis once he calms down and then just becomes weird.
Yeah. And I found it so funny that there's just a wanted poster for the Master in
Yeah,
this
I did
base for
notice
some
that,
reason.
which makes it's a fun little Easter egg, but contextually, it makes no sense in this base because this isn't like a public area.
Yeah. Like, it's the same poster that was in the airport one, but
Right.
it's like in the airport one, it was in the police base,
Hmm.
so that made sense. Here, it's just random.
If it was anywhere here, it should have been at that like security gate from the first episode. That would have
Yeah,
made the most sense,
and in
but
this
it
one, it's
wasn't.
it's just in like the main room that they're in all the time.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. There was definitely a lot of like little weird things about this. The more you think about it, but I do think it was still like a fun story, especially for Victoria. I think
Yeah,
because this was her end, and I think they actually gave her a decent amount in this story, even though it mostly boils down to, oh, I'm so tired of being afraid all the time. Wait a minute, scream again. That'll help, and it actually works. And like, oh, like her scream is the key to victory was kind of the funny way to end it. Um,
yeah,
but I'm happy she wasn't sidelined for her final episode, like a few other companions thus far have been.
yeah. And like, this is like the first time I feel like kind of since Susan where they kind of seed that she's leaving earlier in the story.
Yep.
Like, it's not just a thing that just happens in the final episode. It's like you can tell that she's going to leave.
It doesn't feel random because contracts are ending. It
Yeah,
feels like they tried to make it work into the story in a way that makes sense. And when you really look at her character throughout several stories, it does feel like it's been building up to this. Like each of the past few stories, it really feels like she's more and more stressed by everything. So here, oh, they're
yeah,
gonna go have fun on the beach. They're gonna go play in the foam for some reason, and it's just scarier and scarier. And now there's like the invisible gas that's gonna kill them, which is like, even scarier to her. It's like, you know what, I'm done, Doctor. I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, and it's worth noting too that like she didn't choose to join the TARDIS. They just kind of took her because like they couldn't leave her where she was.
They couldn't leave her
So
with the
like
Daleks. No.
yeah, and like so like it makes sense that the first opportunity she really has, she would just decide to settle down somewhere
hmm Well,
because
there's
they never
definitely
really.
been other opportunities, but I think
Yeah,
like this was a case of they made sure it was safe in the end, so it was a good opportunity to do so, and which I'll talk about that in a moment. Um, but I think it's also a case of that kind of exhaustion because she didn't choose this life, like you mentioned. She didn't choose to be a companion, and she was happy with them, and she definitely there was definitely a part of her that wanted to keep doing it, but she did want somewhere to settle down. And I really liked the exchange she had with Jamie about how there's nothing for her back home in her home century. There's no reason for
yeah,
her to want to go back there because everyone she knew from there is dead. Everyone she knew from there is gone. There's no reason for her to want to go back to that time. As long as
yeah.
it's safe, she's kind of happy anywhere. She'll adapt. She'll make do.
I liked their little goodbye scene with Jamie and Victoria.
Yeah,
It was a nice little scene there.
it was.
And then she kind of got like adoptive parents.
She did. She did. Which I want to talk a little bit about that, specifically like her parents and the role all these other characters kind of played here. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, this might be one of the few classic stories we've seen thus far where you can have a Ninth Doctor moment of everybody lives,
Yeah,
because I genuinely thought they were because like not even like halfway through the episode, oh, the seaweeds defeated and look, everyone's okay, and they start throwing a feast and like everyone's seemingly okay. The leader's back in charge and he's checking in with everyone. I thought they were gonna like sow the seeds that, oh no, like someone's still under control and they're just pretending, or it was like a sleeper agent kind of deal. No, legitimately everything was fine in the end, which is kind of weird for everything we've had thus far.
yeah. Everybody actually survives the story, which is fascinating.
It
Definitely
is.
hasn't happened very much.
No, it really doesn't. So that's why I think that's worth noting. Like, I thought for sure that wife was gonna die. I thought for sure if there
Yeah,
was anyone that was gonna be dead from all of this, it was gonna be like her and maybe the leader. But
yeah,
no, no, for some reason they were fine. The Abbott and Costello over there with all the gas inside of them the whole time were fine. That it's shocking, actually.
yeah. I found like Harris's wife was just a weird character because like they have her walk into the ocean in one episode and then she just doesn't appear again, and it's
Yeah,
just like
like I didn't
she just doesn't appear
understand.
until the end. So it's like, what did she do for the seaweed?
I thought she was like the new leader of it, and I thought we were gonna see her in like the actual like the doctor confronting them, but no, no. Apparently, she was there with the other leader. I didn't notice her in that room with all the other seaweed people,
Yeah,
even
in,
though
in
not all of them were over there. But
in that scene, originally it was just Robson, and then they just added four more people in the animation.
yeah,
So
okay.
it was originally only one person in the room.
And yeah, because that contextually that makes sense because there was still whatever threat might still be at the base of any ones that were
Yeah,
still over there. So I don't know. This was a case of the everybody lives kind of ending was so unbelievable for it that I feel like something was missing. I don't
yeah,
dislike it necessarily. I think we need one of those every now and then, but I literally waited until the credits, expecting they were gonna have like even just like something with the snowmen, where like, oh look, it's still there, it's still moving. I thought we were gonna see something. Oh, there's still a little bit of the seaweed, or there's still something wrong here. Sow the seeds for. Oh, Victoria's not really safe here. Something's still got to be done, but no.
I guess I just didn't want people worrying about Victoria.
I guess. I
So,
guess so.
yeah, and then This was also, I didn't know this beforehand, but this is the first time the sonic screwdriver appeared.
It did, yeah. That's like the only other thing about this episode I really want to talk about. We have the introduction of the sonic screwdriver, and it's not like the Doctor just invented it, or he makes it seem like it's something he's had and has made use of before. Just hasn't brought it out in front of these companions specifically. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah. And apparently, Patrick Troughton kept dropping the screwdriver in the original recording, so he ended up using like a piece of one of the life preservers. I think he ended up using as the prop instead of like there was a pen light he was supposed to use.
That's pretty funny.
Because I think he dropped like the pen light into like into the pipe that they were using, so
Uh-huh.
like he couldn't get it back. So he just
Oh my
grabbed something
god.
off of Victoria's life preserver.
That's
And
pretty funny actually.
then in the animation they used like the design that will show up in later stories for the sonic
Okay.
screwdriver.
Well, that's good. That's good. It does look pretty simple right now.
Yeah, and
Which I
apparently
mean,
like
it is simple right now.
the scene where they're playing around in the foam, apparently that wasn't in the script, and they just started doing that.
That's hilarious, actually. That's
I think
pretty
they
great.
they wanted to prank Deborah Watling, so they pushed her into it, and then they just started playing around in it.
I think that's great though, because I think it's moments like that that really show what kind of dynamic the three of them have. And while
Yeah,
we've already like had it before, especially for Victoria's final story, I think it's actually great to get that because it really is almost like the Doctor's like a new father for her. Like
yeah,
a like an adopted father for her, and Jamie's like a big brother kind of thing.
yeah,
They really were like a little family. It wasn't like super expressed, but you had moments like those where their dynamic really felt like it.
yeah. I also did like I found it so funny at the end when they're cheering. They're like they find out they're selling the helicopter to save the other people, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're sending the helicopter." Like you're cheering for that?
I Yeah, it was a little weird. Also,
Yeah,
how were they all going to fit in the helicopter? Though, if it was just Robson, I guess that makes sense. But
yeah,
I don't know. It was a case of Fury from the Deep as a story feels like it could have used one more episode to tie up a bit more. Because I feel
yeah,
like the pacing of the whole story was pretty good, except for the end. It felt a little rushed to, all right, well, the threat is gone, the threat is over. Now to, the emotional side of things. Everything's good. We're going to show you that everything's good, and Victoria's going to leave. And I'm glad they dedicated a good amount of time to those, but I kind of wish there was a little bit more time in that transitionary period between the two.
yeah. I think this story it was originally supposed to come out before Web of Fear, so like it originally it didn't have the goodbye scene for
Okay.
Victoria. So maybe that's why like they just had to rush through the ending because they had to add
Maybe.
all that to it.
Maybe. That makes sense if that's the case.
Yeah. I did also like the TARDIS lands on the water in this story, which is just kind of
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah, that doesn't happen, and they have to take a little boat to and from it.
And then it's funny just because like there are first Doctor stories where they land by the ocean, and then they're like, oh well, we have to wait until the tide goes back down. So like it only floats sometimes.
It has to specifically land on the water to float.
Yeah,
Although I want to note though my feelings about the ending there. I mean, we've kind of had a lot of feelings like that in a lot of this classic Who era. We've had a lot of
yeah,
moments where the endings don't quite feel as clean as the entire rest of the story. But we've also have that in modern Who sometimes, where sometimes it feels
yeah,
like the main threat is just kind of eliminated like 30 minutes out of 45 minutes into the episode, and then they spend the other 15 minutes with like some sort of emotional ending, or the threat's gone so early you wonder how are they gonna do the rest of the story. I guess that wasn't really the focus after all, so it's not weird for that to be the case. I think it's more so
yeah,
just it makes me wonder what else they could have done with it.
yeah. I mean, we just had that last season in New Who. The
Yep.
final episode, you defeat Sutek like 30 minutes into it, and then you have 20 minutes of like all the other stuff.
Exactly. Exactly. So that kind of thing is pretty standard for Doctor Who, honestly.
Yeah,
But I am really glad Victoria got a good farewell because it feels like too long since we've really had that. Because most of the other companions at this point, any goodbye they had for the most part felt a little sudden, or
yeah,
it was like contractual issues. They filmed their goodbye earlier in the story in filming, and then they're just gone from the rest of the actual story.
yeah. I know Deborah Watling like always wanted to only be there for a year, so
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I guess they knew it. They knew a bit ahead of time that they would have to have her leaving,
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
and then they planned for it nicely, which definitely worked out.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I found out that apparently when they did the cassette release for this story, it
Mm-hmm.
was Tom Baker did the narration and he did it in character as the Fourth Doctor, which
Oh,
is just funny.
that's a little
Apparently,
odd.
apparently he did that for Power of the Daleks as well, and I went to check that one out because like there's the regeneration scene there, and I was curious what he said.
Yeah.
And it's very funny because he's like, some Time Lords get more handsome with every regeneration. I was not so lucky this time. Like Jesus, what do you have against the Second Doctor?
Wow.
He's like, I went from like a handsome old man to not what I would have chosen for myself at the time.
That's hilarious.
What did
Poor
the
Patrick
Second Doctor
Troughton.
do to you?
That's hilarious, actually.
And then this story was written by Victor Pemberton, who was like temporarily our script editor a little while ago.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, he originally pitched this like really early on in Doctor Who, and then it didn't get made. And then he did a radio play, which was the original idea for it, which was like Mud Monsters.
Huh. Okay.
And then in that radio play, it had Roger Delgado as the main
Oh,
character, which is a bit funny.
that's actually pretty funny how everything
And
comes
then it
together.
was Peter Bryant, who was, I think he was the producer. He did that radio play with him. So then when he pitched it as a Doctor Who episode, he's like, "Yeah, sure, I liked that story. Let's just make it a seaweed monster instead of mud."
Yeah, make it a little bit different.
But yeah, I think this story was like it had a very good atmosphere. Like the story was
Yeah,
kind of basic, but
it
like
was.
the atmosphere kept it going.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Yeah, I guess that means we say goodbye to Victoria.
Yeah, she's honestly been pretty great. Like, I actually really
Yeah,
liked her as a companion. I wouldn't say she was the helpless little girl that we had a lot of from Susan. Um, Victoria did a lot and actually had some pretty good plans a lot of the time, like to get away from people, to use her screaming to her advantage. Like in Tomb of the Cybermen or in The Abominable Snowman. It was actually like pretty neat seeing her come up with the plan and immediately put it to action.
yeah. I think she had like a fascinating just character concept because like she's from the
Mm-hmm.
past, yes, but she's also the daughter of a scientist.
Yep.
So like she does understand a lot of the science fiction stuff, even though she's from the past. So like she's an interesting character you got there.
Mm-hmm. Especially since her first adventures were dealing with Daleks and then Cybermen. I think
Yeah,
there's a lot there for her to be able to just take it in her stride, even though she recognizes none of this is natural to me. But then
yeah,
again, neither is the time difference between Jamie and I, or time traveling in the TARDIS. But she adapted pretty quick, which is good.
yeah,
But I loved
and
her
like
perspective, and her and Jamie's perspective together, like both of them not knowing what a helicopter was, for example, and
yeah,
the ways they play it up with little things, I think was done really well.
yeah. She's not like a favorite companion of mine, but I definitely enjoyed her time here.
Yeah, exactly, exactly that.
I do find it funny though that like in her last story, her big contribution is just screaming. Her screaming saves the day.
It's pretty funny, honestly. Like it's pretty funny, but I love the whole little bit they did with it too where all right, scream into this. What do you mean? Scream into this. We're going to record it. Oh, I can't just scream. And the doctor's like, "What? You have to. You must." Like he
Yeah.
starts panicking over the fact that she can't.
Apparently, it was originally going to be Jamie playing bagpipes that defeated it, which just felt like I feel like that wouldn't work as well because like, how did they figure that one out?
Yeah.
Like, did he just have his bagpipes on him and then it's just like, oh wow, it scared away the monsters?
That would have been hilarious, and I would have loved to see them like trying different things when it comes to sound waves. Like, okay, Jamie, you play the bagpipes, and the doctor pulls out his little recorder that they had tried playing different things to see what sound frequencies. I think that would have been like a fun little scene of them trying, and then they
Yeah,
find it's Victoria's scream. But
yeah. And then Victoria was apparently originally planned for the Five Doctors, but then she was booked on a different show at the time, so
ah,
she wasn't able to. There was also going to be a Sixth Doctor story where Victoria returned as well,
oh wow,
which eventually was made into a Big Finish story called Power Play.
okay. So
Because
it ended up happening eventually, just not in the
yeah,
way they initially envisioned.
Deborah Watling was doing Big Finish for a little while there, but she passed away in 2017 from lung cancer, so
Ah,
I
that's
don't think
unfortunate.
Victoria has gotten a new voice actress after that.
Mm-hmm.
So she was in Big Finish for a bit, but
Mm-hmm.
hasn't been for a while now.
I see. I see.
But yeah, I guess we can move on to Wheel in Space if you
Yeah.
don't have anything else to say.
Yeah, sounds good to me. We could talk about this other story with incompetent leader.
I can't say I enjoyed this one all that much because the story didn't make that much sense at points.
Yeah.
Like the
The,
Cybermen's plans just kind of felt like they were all over the place.
there were elements of this story that I really liked, and then there were elements that, yeah, definitely felt half baked or felt like they didn't really finish the idea. Like the first episode of the Doctor and Jamie stuck on this like tiny spacecraft. I would watch an entire story of them stuck there having to communicate with other people. I think that was actually really fascinating. Them having to work around three rooms. Um,
Yeah,
I think they had some really creative little scenes there. Um, but there was definitely a lot of like head scratchers when it comes to the greater plot because of that. Like,
yeah,
okay, so presumably the Cybermen had infiltrated that ship. They had, they had like jettisoned the crew a while back, and they were using that ship to head towards the wheel in space. Okay, where were the Cybermen when the Doctor and Jamie were on it? Because that was a very small ship. What was that other robot that was controlling things? There was
yeah,
no mention of it from them, like from the Cybermen or the people running the wheel in space. You would think maybe it was like the automated, like I guess the autopilot for the ship, but the people didn't mention anything about it. They didn't go, "Why did you destroy the autopilot?" or "What the heck was that robot on the ship with you?" They just nothing about it.
yeah,
Um, which is very weird. You would think the Doctor and Jamie, uh, being stuck there for as long as they were, would have discovered a sign of the Cybermen if they were actually there.
yeah.
But they were in these weird like pods, these eggs, basically. Same with the Cybermats. Um, I don't know. It's weird. It's like it feels like two different stories that were put together. They're not very
Yeah, kind
even,
of.
but it feels like they didn't know how to start the wheel in space, so they took the idea from a different story that didn't have an ending, and they kind of put it together. That's how it feels to me, at least.
Yeah, and like if the Cybermen were trying to infiltrate the wheel, the issue is like if the Doctor didn't arrive, that whole plan wouldn't have happened.
Yeah,
Because like they would have just blown up the ship, and okay, Cybermen aren't getting on the ship now.
yeah, exactly. They would have just blown up the ship, and that wouldn't have worked out well for them. And even though they like sent out the Cybermats, yeah, they would have, you know, caused problems on the wheel in space, but they wouldn't have gotten the other Cybermen. I mean, I guess I guess the Cybermats could have, on their own, could have been enough for the Cyberman ship that was coming in like late into the story.
Yeah,
But even still, there's too many loose ends there that wouldn't have made too much sense unless, the doctor was actually there. We
yeah,
also don't find out how they were able to get back to the TARDIS despite that room being sealed. Yes, we see the doctor trying to free up that room when they're still on that ship, but we don't actually see if it worked. So
yeah,
I guess it worked. Um, and then there's a lot of random decisions from the Cybermen in this story between who they kill and who they control. And I don't really understand the decisions they made for it. You would think, yes, let's take control of the leaders so that the leaders can can further our plan and not have their subordinates question it. No. Instead, we're going to kill the leaders when we find them, and we're going to control these random guys that are helping work on the laser.
yeah. And then
That
even like
didn't
the
feel
main
very well
guy
thought
work
out.
the main guy working on the laser they control, and then they make him go kill himself.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, weird.
And then they even know, oh, his orders wasn't to kill himself. It wasn't to completely destroy the entire communications unit. It was just like the transceiver, I think is what it was. Like it was one part of it he was
Yeah,
supposed to destroy, not the whole thing. And even the doctor's just like, oh, I see. Like that's supposed to fix anything.
yeah,
um and then like the the leader, Jarvis, didn't amount to anything in the end. You had his
yeah,
whole you had this whole kind of side plot with him, which felt like it was a case of just getting other people in charge, and then he just gets killed by the Cybermen. He
yeah,
starts some sort of plan, but his plan just amounts to he gets trapped with the Cybermen and gets killed by them. So I don't see where they were trying to go with him. I think it sucks that the second in command was killed because she was actually a pretty good character.
yeah. I was surprised when she died because it like she kind of felt like she was going to be like the main character of the story, and then they
Yeah,
just kill her off.
yeah. It was kind of weird, but sad.
The whole thing with the leader definitely confuses me though, because like they like somewhat imply he's been like brainwashed into like he hates anything that doesn't have any logic behind it and stuff. So they're like, because like he goes like catatonic over it and
Yep,
everything. So they're like
yep.
something's like affecting him, but then like that just doesn't amount to anything.
The same
He just
kind
like
of
wakes
goes.
up and goes and gets himself killed by Cybermen.
The
And
same kind of
okay,
goes for Zoe too, where
yeah,
they go over just how logic based she is, and oh, the brainwashing of how she was raised and the reason she was made. And it's like, what kind of society is it that they come from? Because they're not telling us enough about all this. They make
yeah,
it sound like she's a lesser being to them that was artificially created, not a robot, but like a grown human, so to say, augmented lifespan or some sort of different lifespan that's made solely to be basically a living computer, is what they made it
yeah,
sound like. But they did not say enough. They like sowed seeds and little hints, like, oh, the fact that you are even curious about emotions and think you have them or want them is signs you're not completely brainwashed by them. It's like, so were they good or bad? Because all
yeah,
context of conversation around it sounded like they rescued her from something evil, to be honest. But then in other contexts, it's like, oh, that's just how the academy is. That's how she's here. No, good, you survived their brainwashing. Like, okay, are we just talking political? Like I
yeah,
don't like it's not well defined.
yeah. The story was written by David Whitaker, who did like the Dalek stories, and I'm kind of
Yeah.
surprised that like it just it doesn't feel as good as any of his other stories. I feel.
Mm-mm. That's why I feel like it was originally two stories combined together, because like
Yeah,
one didn't have an end and the other didn't have a start. There's just too much disconnect between that original ship and the wheel in space. They keep trying to drill it in that it all comes back to this. It's really important, but it really isn't. Like, it
Yeah.
feels like most mentions of it was to remind you that it's important, to remind you that it's there and part of the story, because the TARDIS is there.
Yeah.
Um, because it really feels like a disconnect. Like, I think it would have made far more sense if the Doctor and Jamie landed on the wheel in space when they were already ambushed by the Cybermen, the Cybermats. Their defenses were down, and they were hit by pieces of the asteroids, shook the place around a little bit, knocked out their comms, and made the Doctor fall and get a concussion. Suddenly, you're at the exact same place in the story.
Yeah.
Like,
I also I found
I
it
don't know.
funny how like Jamie just goes and like messes with their laser, and he doesn't even ask them not to blow up the rocket.
No.
Just saying like
No.
there's something on there that we need. And like no, he just goes and sabotages everything. Just like okay, not even gonna ask.
No, the fact that he just snuck away to do that, didn't say anything, and then he pins it all on the Doctor, and the Doctor's even just like, oh yeah, leave me to clean up your messes. I just want to rest longer.
And then we had another first of the John Smith alias, which Jamie
That's
just came up
true.
with.
That's true. All because it
I
was
love
written right in front of him.
I love the scene with the Doctor though, where he's like, "Oh, this is John Smith," and he looks over his shoulder to try to find John Smith, and it's like, "No, no." James is like, "No, John, I'm talking about you."
And then it never comes back again after that.
Yep.
Like, it is a funny little scene. I guess that's the start of the Doctor starting to go by John Smith, and I think it's just we're just gonna see he just kind of keeps going with it from there. But I do find it funny that not once after then did they really go back to that at any point.
Yeah. You even have like the guy getting interviewed at the end, and he's like, he doesn't know the Doctor's name,
Yep.
but the
Even
Doctor did
though
give a name.
he did give a name exactly.
I found it funny though that like Jamie just came up with that out of nowhere, and then the Doctor just runs with it for the rest of his life.
Yep. Quick, I need a name. Oh, the one time I was given a name.
John Smith.
Oh man. But yeah, I think there's too many like loose ends with this story that I don't think it comes together very well. There's a lot of like neat little ideas, but unfortunately, I think it's the less interesting story compared to Fury from the Deep,
Yeah.
which is a shame because I think there's a lot of good ideas, and I do like Zoe, but I need to see more about her because right now it really feels zeroed in on she's a genius, but she only knows logic. She doesn't understand emotions.
Yeah. I think that's
And
a good concept for a character though, because like
it is.
we're gonna see her opening up to emotions over the time, so it's like it's a good thing where like you can see what she's gonna get from being on the TARDIS.
Yeah. And I do like that. I'm just saying I wish that the story as a whole played a little more with all of all of its ideas, including that. Because
Yeah.
what it really gave us from her was reason to leave. Because everyone over there who is still alive basically just treats her like a robot
Yeah.
and thinks little of her. I am
And
excited to see more of her though.
yeah. I definitely found I liked like the domestic Doctor and Jamie stuff on the spaceship at the beginning though.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just like domestic life where the Doctor has to like use a food synthesizer, and Jamie's like, I don't want to eat this.
Takes one bite.
Yeah,
Meanwhile, the doctor's got like the napkin ready and everything. He's ready for a full meal from this thing.
I liked how Zoe laughed at Jamie's kilt as well.
That was actually pretty funny. Yeah,
And the Cybermen did also have the teardrops on their faces for the first time,
they did. Their
which
design is everything.
comes back. That's
Yeah.
like Modern Who keeps that.
That is like one of the main symbols from them. Yeah, at this point. The other inconsistency about Zoe, actually, now that I think about it, she was introduced as basically a librarian.
Yeah,
Like, she was introduced as like basically like someone who's keeping track of like the data or like specific info, but then everything that she does throughout the entire rest of the story makes it sound like she's like this integral part of the team. that
Yeah.
like she's the one that has all the calculations. She's the one that like double and triple checks everything for them. Like she should be in that like main room with them all the time. So it's weird.
Yeah. And like she's the one that told them that like a star was going supernova.
Yep.
So like she should definitely be in the main control room, not in the library.
Yeah, exactly.
It was also funny how Jamie doesn't know what a tape recorder is, even though in Fury from the Deep, a tape recorder is what they use to save the day, which
Yeah,
is
that
funny.
that was a little funny of him.
He's yeah, I guess it was written without knowing what happened in the previous story, maybe.
Probably. That's probably like the easiest explanation.
Yeah. And then there was the one guy that the Cybermen just decided to throw in the incinerator instead of brainwashing, which I just found weird. Like
Again,
they knock a
that's
guy out
kind of the
and they
case
just
of
throw him out because they don't want
yeah.
him.
That's the weird case of how are they choosing who they kill and who they brainwash. Like there was no rhyme or reason to it, which is weird because normally you can very clearly understand every decision the Cybermen make because that's who they are. So the
Yeah.
fact that you couldn't hear didn't feel right. I kind of feel like the story wasn't originally meant to be Cybermen. Now that I'm saying that, actually,
Yeah. Maybe.
especially with that robot at first.
Yeah, and like we know that robot was working with the Cybermen because like it's the one that made the bubbles
Mm-hmm.
like come out of the case.
Exactly. But that robot's nothing like the Cybermen. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
I really think maybe that's a good issue here. Maybe this wasn't originally meant to be a Cyberman story, but we've gone a few episodes, a few serials without them. You know, we had like the snowman or the abominable snowman, the Yeti. We had the seaweed, but like it's been long enough in quotes since the Cybermen that they needed another hit. So in the middle of writing this story, they're like, okay, we need this to be a Cybermen story. Actually, can you work them into it?
Yeah.
Obviously,
Definitely
behind the scenes could say otherwise, but thinking on it, I wonder if that's what happened.
yeah, it definitely feels like that might have happened.
Mm-hmm.
Cuz they definitely don't feel like Cybermen. Like they kind of do cuz like they have like they use the Wi-Fi brainwashing and stuff, but like
Yeah,
like in previous stories when they did that, they had to like upgrade you first.
yeah,
And then in this it's just nope, they just look at you.
yeah. But it's the fact that they feel less predictable to the viewer. They feel less logic based, which is in a story like this with like Zoe and all these other people, you would think that would play a much bigger part. You would think that would uh, be something huge to it. Like, oh, you know, well, they're relying only on logic. You people only rely on logic. We need the other human element that not logic to be able to beat them, kind of thing. They didn't do any of
Yeah.
that, and the 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 logic of the Cybermen didn't make sense. We already went over that a couple times now, so it feels like it wasn't originally supposed to be the Cybermen. Then it was turned into the Cybermen, and rather than adapting the story completely from there, they made certain changes and then said, okay, what more can we do with the Cybermen now? And they took it from there, rather than rewriting certain elements to make more sense with Cybermen, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Definitely would make sense if that's what happened, I would say.
Mm-hmm. I could be wrong. Could just be a fluke. Could just
Yeah.
be this one just wasn't that good. I don't know.
And I find it funny at the end that the doctor shows Zoe a clip of Evil of Alex, and it's like they don't even try to use a clip that the doctor was there for, which is funny.
Which is so
'Cause, like,
weird.
He interacted with the Daleks in that story, but they use the scene of like the guy that gets murdered, like at the dude's house before the
Yeah.
doctor shows up.
Yeah. It didn't really make much sense in that case. But the fact that that's used as like the episode cliffhanger was kind of weird to me because that makes you feel like, oh, are we going to be dealing with Daleks in the next episode? Like,
Well, when this was airing, if you remember last time, like when we watched Evil of Daleks, I mentioned that they did a rerun of it. So like that's why they did
right,
it there, was because they did a rerun of
right.
it immediately after this, and then in context, you're supposed to think that he's showing her the entire story,
Okay.
and then that was their carryover. So like between season 5 and season 6, they did a rerun. So like that's where the logic came from.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. That's kind of interesting, too, like, in-universe doing that.
Yeah. And I guess we should also just mention that like we watched a fan animation for this, and I think it was better than Web of Fear. I gotta be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. I gotta be real in general. I think that fan animation was actually really good.
Yeah, like it definitely had like facial expressions and stuff on it, which definitely helped.
It
They did
had
their
good
best to
facial
make them.
expressions, but, like, there was a lot of, like, little subtle things, too, that were, like,
Yeah,
really good. Like, even just, like the way the clothes moved, the way the characters themselves animated, and, like, the fact that, and when I heard it was a fan animation, my expectation was it was going to be 2D and it was going to look a little bit worse than the other animated episodes we have, like some of the lower quality ones where like
yeah,
their mouths don't move too much, and the only ones really moving are the ones the camera's focusing on. The background characters won't really be moving that much. But this had like whole moments where like here's the whole like crew at work, and even the people in the background are doing something. Like this
yeah.
was really good, actually.
And they did do they did I forget what the term is, but like movement capture stuff. They did all that.
Mm-hmm.
So like it was very well done,
It
especially
really
since it's like
was.
it's a budget where they had no budget for this animation. They were just doing it in their free time, and it's very
BBC,
good.
hire this fan, hire this person. Like this was really well done,
Yeah,
and I would say the quality of this was actually higher than several of the other official animations they've put out over the years.
yeah.
Imagine what this person could do on a budget.
I know they did pitch it to the BBC, but the BBC just said like, well, people didn't like the Web of Fear animations, so we don't want to do 3D animations anymore. But like, that's because the Web of Fear animation wasn't good.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
not that it was
one really
3D;
wasn't.
it's that it wasn't good.
Like the camera angles, the subtleties in the movements, the fact that you could pretty much match what Patrick Troughton was doing to what he was saying, and like
Yeah,
kind of match his mannerisms a little bit. That helped a lot here. Something you don't get in the 2D animations.
yeah. I think this person has said that like they would like to do a Web of Fear as well on their own, but like that doesn't mean it's going to be coming out soon because like
Yeah.
it takes a while.
Yeah, I imagine it takes quite a while. But like Rusty Davies, BBC, talk to this person. Like hire them
Yeah,
because you can make a lot more really good quality animations if you get them with you.
I mean they could just get them to release this one officially,
Yeah,
and
honestly.
there you go.
Well,
Then you have another story done.
did they animate all of them though? Because I know that the what we watched didn't the playlist didn't have the surviving episodes in there.
Yeah, they just didn't animate the surviving ones.
Okay, so I guess
I mean,
that would be part of the thing of for an official release of it, you would need those episodes also animated so you can have a complete set of animated as well as hey as a bonus here's the two surviving episodes. Kind of
yeah. I mean, if they give them a budget, they can just do those 2 episodes, and that's all they have to do.
exactly, but I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like that story was messy for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I would also like to note that, according to different sources, this either takes place in like the late 21st century or early 21st century,
Wait,
depending
really?
on what you ask. Like, I think the generally agreed upon time right now is 2079, but apparently in other ones it implies it might be like 2000. So,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. I did not get that vibe.
It's especially weird just because, like, the moon base was 2070, and then this is 2079, and they don't know what a Cyberman is.
Yeah,
Like,
I thought honestly, I thought this would have been like at least another 100 or so years off. That's why people didn't know what Cybermen were again.
yeah. Because, like, the moon base establishes that, like, they all knew what a Cyberman was ever since the 10th planet.
Yep.
And then this, they just don't know what a Cyberman is. So it feels like it should be way distant in the future, but apparently not. And
I
then
think the
this was,
funniest thing about this too is this did not carry off from the Tomb of the Cybermen cliffhanger. Like, even though a Cyberman
yeah,
survived and they might still be out there, these were not related to those.
no. This is also the final story with Peter Hawkins, who is one of the original voices of both Daleks and Cybermen. Like,
Oh,
they've had multiple voice actors in each of them, so like we're probably still gonna have like some of the same voices, but
mm-hmm.
he has now left the show, and he
I
was
see.
one of the originals.
I see. I see.
But yeah, I guess that's the end of season 5. I feel
Yeah,
like season 5 has ups and downs. It's very like season 2 in that way.
it does. But looking at like the full list of the episodes, like, because obviously this is the first like full season of the Second Doctor. Because season four,
Yeah,
the regeneration happened pretty early on in it. But like actively looking at what was in this season, I mean, first of all, Jamie and Victoria together, fantastic pair with the Doctor. The
yeah,
TARDIS team, fantastic. I really love all three of them together. But like Tomb of the Cybermen, the Abominable Snowmen, the Ice Warriors, Enemy of the World, Web of Fear, Fury from the Deep, Wheel in Space. I feel like the worst episode in here was just okay. I don't think any of them were
yeah,
actively bad. Like, I know we talked about how like Abominable Snowmen and Ice Warriors were like okay. They weren't bad, but like they were kind of boring. Like Ice Warriors we thought would be a bit better. Um Web of Fears kind of but like between Tomb of the Cybermen and Enemy of the World alone, this might be my favorite season we've watched so far.
yeah. There's definitely some very high highs in this. I would say
Yeah, there's some really good highs in this season.
some of the stories I'm like I'm not crazy about, but they're
Mm-hmm.
fine ultimately.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I would say like Enemy of the World is definitely my favorite of the season,
Yeah, Enemy of the World is really, really good.
and it's one
I,
of my
I think
favorites in general.
I think the Ice Warriors is probably the weakest story to me out of the whole bunch, out of the whole season,
Yeah,
which is a shame because I think it's a really cool concept. But I think every other story had more going for it, and to varying degrees lived up to their potential. Even Fury from the Deep and Wheel in Space, while we were just saying like they were okay, I wouldn't say they were bad episodes. I still enjoyed my time watching them. I just think they're not as good as what I would say are some better episodes, some better stories. They did
yeah,
not fully live up to their potential. They had problems for sure. Um, the Wheel in Space is definitely no Tomb of the Cybermen, that's for sure.
yeah. I know we will be seeing Ice Warriors next season,
Okay, maybe
so
they'll be a
so
bit
they
better
will
then.
get yeah, and then we get Cybermen as well next season.
Okay, okay.
I am looking forward to next season though, because there's important stuff in there. Obviously,
Yeah,
we're getting a unit pretty soon,
yeah.
and then the war games I'm looking forward to as well. Just because it's like a an important story because we get Time Lords.
Yeah, it's true. There's only one more season with this Doctor.
Yep,
Wow.
I, I've been enjoying the second Doctor quite a bit.
Yeah, same.
Like
Quite a bit.
I liked the first Doctor, but I think I like the second Doctor better.
Yeah, same. There's a lot of what we're used to from modern doctors that we can see in the second Doctor here, and I think a lot
Yeah,
of where they decided to take the direction of the Doctor as a character started with the second Doctor.
yeah, for
Like,
sure.
sure, the first Doctor is the origin of it all, the roots to it all, the core of the Doctor is there. But I think a lot of the smaller things, the things that make the Doctor such a likable character, I think definitely started more so with the second Doctor. And I think it's because, yes, the first Doctor struggled at first, where Ian was more so the protagonist, or whatever male companion was with him was more so the protagonist, and the Doctor was assisting and was able to do a lot, but only so much because he was an old man that wasn't able to run around with energy.
Yeah,
Um, but just the fact that like any classic fan of Doctor Who could quote the "When I say run, 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 Jamie." Like that's so iconic for a reason, I
Yeah,
think.
and they definitely play up the heroic
Yep,
like belief system of the Doctor a lot
they
more
really
here.
do. They really do, and I think that helps a lot. That helps a
Anytime he
lot.
finds out there's trouble, he's dedicated to saving the day. Whereas the
Yep.
first Doctor was like, "I'll
Only if
help
he's
just
already
because I'm stuck
involved.
here." Yeah, because I'm stuck here, so I'll help out.
Yep. Yep.
But if I can get back to my TARDIS, then I'm just leaving. And maybe I will blow up Troy just to go get my companion.
Yeah, yeah, it's certainly a mess. It's certainly
Yep.
a mess. First Doctor is very morally gray, actually. He's
Yeah.
not quite as much of a hero as he tries to be. And I think that's why with this regeneration with the second Doctor, it's all right. Do better.
Yep.
But yeah, season 5 has been my favorite so far, I think, overall.
Yep.
And I'm pretty excited for what's next with season 6. I mean, I definitely am curious for Zoe as a character, and I know, this last season of the second Doctor really starts to set up a lot more, like we mentioned Unit. Like, I think it's going to be a good one, I think.
And I know behind the scenes next season we get uh Robert Holmes gets his first script, and Robert Holmes is he contributed the most stories to Classic Who out of anybody. So
Oh,
there's
okay.
very important people coming into the picture next season.
Yeah.
And then
I know next season also isn't as even with its episode counts in each series,
yeah,
but
and then Terrence Dix also shows up next season, and then he's the script editor, I think, for the entire Third Doctor era.
oh,
So
okay.
we're getting important people coming to the picture.
Yeah.
And yeah, next season's a bit uneven. It will probably still be like it'll be on average either 10 episodes or 12 episodes for us per
Mhm.
our things, because there's two 5-parters, then there's an 8-parter, and then a 4-parter, and then two 6-parters, and then the War Games, which is 10.
Okay, the
So
War
it's
Games is definitely going to be its own episode when we get to that point.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. Which makes sense because you do the War Games, you do, uh, you look back. We look back at the entirety of the Second Doctor at that point, and by the
Yeah.
time we get to that too, for all we know, we may have more actual Doctor Who modern stuff to talk about too, because that's still going to
Yep.
be a bit.
And then next season it's also almost entirely surviving, which is nice.
Oh,
There's
excellent.
The Invasion is an 8-parter. There are 2 episodes of it that are animated. And then the Space Pirates is a 6-parter, and it's only 1 episode survives. Other than that, everything is surviving.
Do you think that's why Zoe's much more of a remembered companion of the Second Doctor and more iconic in terms of like when you look at like the defining like uh Doctor companion pairings? Like most people talk about the Second Doctor with Jamie and Zoe, not Victoria. Do you think it's
Yeah,
because most of her episodes are surviving?
it's possible. Although, I mean, like, obviously there were animations for, like, this entire season. So
Yeah, but
you
how
can at
much
least
later
watch
did
it
those come
moving.
out? Is the thing,
Yeah,
Like
that's true.
because some
It
of those
definitely
were
probably
more
helps.
recent, so.
Yeah, it probably helps that this whole season is basically surviving.
Mhm. That's going to be really exciting, getting to see a lot more of just all these character performances, because the second Doctor's performance, Patrick Troughton's performance has been like really really great and exciting to watch, and Jamie's as
Yeah.
well. So
Yeah. It'll be nice to have surviving episodes. And then obviously, once we're done with the second Doctor, everything survives.
yeah, it'll be
Yeah.
interesting.
And then obviously they in the Invasion, they kind of that's basically their testing ground for the idea of trapping the Doctor on Earth in modern day. So it's they introduce Unit in there, and it's basically like I think like the writers that were doing it were already thinking of maybe for the third Doctor we're just going to trap him here,
Mm-hmm.
and then they do.
Yeah,
But yeah, I guess we should move on to some news because there has been some big news about
Yeah,
new
there
Doctor
has
Who now.
been.
So we got the writers announced for the new season. They are, I don't know how to say his name. I think it's Pete McTighe.
I think
McTighe.
it's Pete
I'm not
Matai.
sure.
Yeah.
Something like that. Juno Dawson, Inua Ellams, and Sharma Angel Walfall. So Pete McTighe, people would recognize from the 13th Doctor episodes Kerblam and Praxius, which
Right.
are not well liked, but he did also do Tales of the TARDIS. I think he wrote like all of Tales of the TARDIS, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, really? Okay.
And then he's also doing The War Between the Land and the Sea. So
Yeah, so he's
I'm kind of
really
wondering.
active.
I feel like his episode might just be like a backdoor pilot for War Between the Land and the Sea, sort of, because like
Yeah, I could see that.
you know, at least it. I would assume it's probably at least going to be like the unit episode, just so that he's like getting used to
Yeah.
writing those characters.
That would make sense, yeah.
And then Juno Dawson wrote Doctor Who Redacted, which it was like a scripted podcast that they made a few years ago.
Right, yes.
And then she's a trans woman, so we got some representation behind the scenes there.
Nice. Nice, nice.
And then Inua Ellams and Sharma Angel Walfall have not written that much. They're the two writers that Russell Davis said around Christmas. There's like two new writers, and yeah, it's those two. And they are both
Oh,
black,
okay.
so we got some black writers as well.
Nice.
Good representation
Nice.
behind the scenes for this season, I would say.
Yeah, seriously. And I think that's going to be good. I think having a good varied representation is going to help actually putting that to action.
Yeah.
Having that representation feel like better representation on screen.
Yeah.
Hopefully, at least.
And you gotta like it when Doctor Who gives new writers a chance.
Yeah.
I think in Wetlands, I think he's written like a poetry book that he published.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think Sharma Angel Wallfall did like one episode of one other show. And this is
Okay.
like her second episode of something.
Interesting.
So
Okay.
it's good to see Doctor Who giving people a shot at,
Yeah, it is.
yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing what these writers bring forth because I think
Yeah.
I'm excited for that new season. I'm excited for it. We don't know
Yeah.
when it is. I'm hoping it's like April.
Well, apparently Inua Ellams kind of accidentally said it's coming out
Oh.
in April.
Yes, let's go 1 month earlier.
There were some websites reporting that he said it's in April. April to May is when it's coming out, but then
Mm-hmm.
I think he deleted the Instagram post in which he said that because he wasn't supposed to say it.
Yep. Yep.
So yeah, apparently it's coming out in April. I assume we're going to get an announcement pretty soon then if it's coming out that quickly because that's only 2 months away.
Yeah, that's true. I imagine. No, I don't think there's any important like dates in Doctor Who history in February or March, is there? Because I was gonna say
I
if
don't
there's
think
like a
so.
date, if there's a date to look out for, that could be telling. But no, there may not be. It might be,
Yeah.
and then I don't see the BBC. Actually, but with Disney. No. I was gonna say if there was like big events, like maybe like like a Super Bowl commercial with Disney money, but no.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't think that would be the place to do that.
no. Well, I don't know. You get a lot of weird things showing up at that, but also with the Disney money. But actually, hold on. I'm gonna live. When is Gallifrey 1, the Doctor Who convention? That is okay. The weekend this episode comes out. Last year, it's like the largest North American Doctor Who convention. Last
Gotcha.
year, they had something from season 1 show up. They had like a little introduction from RTD and Ncuti Gatwa, and like official poster for the season was released. I think they had like a small clip of a trailer, or like they said when more news was coming during that. So
Yeah.
we might actually know by the time this episode comes out, or around when this episode comes out for you guys. We might have something about it then.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm
Although,
looking forward to this.
yeah, I think it's gonna be
Eagerly
good.
waiting it. Apparently, they also said that like the cartoon guy that was in the trailer apparently has a voice that's like an important person from Doctor Who history or something,
Watch it be Tom
something like
Baker.
that. That'd be funny.
Because no, the funniest thing is people. You're gonna have everybody trying to identify that voice, and then just gonna be like, "Oh, what's the significance? What's the significance?" They wouldn't just randomly do that cameo.
Yeah, I know some people were saying maybe it's going to be the same voice as Sutek. That'd be funny.
Oh, that would be interesting. That would be interesting.
I feel like maybe
I
he's a bit too recent though.
I think the other one, because I actually you saying this reminded me. I actually did hear about this, and I heard people theorizing. A lot of people actually think it might be Sylvester McCoy, the Seventh Doctor.
That'd be funny.
One, just because he'd be pretty fitting for that, but also because you have a lot of like the class adopters like wanting to get involved again in some way. I mean, Tales of the TARDIS is
Yeah,
just one way. It would be really interesting to see any of them. Like everyone wants the Eighth Doctor to finally get some sort of series or some sort of show or something. That would be great. It would be interesting to see the other classic Doctors come back through other roles.
yeah. I know some people were also saying maybe Neil Patrick Harris will do the voice because
Yeah, but Neil Patrick Harris
he's the
doesn't
toy
have
maker.
like he's a toy maker, but he doesn't have like a long history with Doctor Who. Like I don't know. I
Yeah,
feel like the quote would be misleading then if it was Neil Patrick Harris.
yeah. I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, we'll find out.
And then there was also the Fugitive Doctor Big Finish box set did release
Oh, it
like
did
last
release.
week. Yes,
Okay, I need to make sure to grab that.
I listened to it pretty immediately.
Good. Was it good?
I'm not like crazy about it, but
Okay.
it was good.
Hmm.
I think something that I just find weird is that like they don't want to give any answers as to who the Fugitive Doctor is, so they're like trying to make it not seem like fits into like any specific part of the timeline, which is weird to me. Because like
I see.
I feel like the show pretty explicitly said she's from before the first Doctor, but they don't want to say that in this.
It's so weird because I guess it's like surely that must be like directive from higher up in case they decide to do something with it on screen so they don't,
Yeah,
contradict each other. Like that must be it. Because the only reason I could think for them to not go ahead and fully confirm, oh, she was the real first Doctor all along, or she's from before Hartnell, would be if they intend to retcon like in between some random regenerations, a whole era of the Doctor's life that was white, so the Doctor thinks they regenerated from one face to another when there was this other one right in between. But there's so much about her that wouldn't make sense anywhere after Hartnell.
yeah. I think it's largely just that like BBC or Big Finish doesn't want to give answers that will just be contradicted by the show,
Yeah,
and like theoretically she could show up in the show again.
yeah, yeah. That's true.
But they did sort of semi imply an answer as to how she has a police box TARDIS if she's
Oh,
from
did
pre
they?
Hartnell. There's like a line that like sort of says like sometimes the TARDIS chameleon circuit will pull from like local legends and stuff, and then she's like, my police box just or my TARDIS randomly turns into a police box sometimes, and I'm not really sure why. So it's like it's not a broken chameleon circuit. It just sometimes pulls from the fact that people think a TARDIS should look like a police box, I guess.
Yeah, I see. I see.
But like it's
Depend.
kind of like just an offhanded comment, so it's like theoretically if she's from later in the timeline, then you don't really have to worry about it.
Mm-hmm. I see.
And then they also established that like she has already been brain or mind wiped, so
What?
theoretically she might like I think they use that as an explanation just to say that like she could be like after the second Doctor or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's because like she just doesn't remember anything. But it's like
Okay.
she has already had her mind wiped before, and then from what
Damn.
we understand, it will happen again.
Damn, Doctor, this happens to you a little too often now.
Yeah. and then she meets Daleks in that first story, and then the Daleks know the Doctor is already their enemy, but she doesn't understand why they know that.
Okay.
So it's either they are from her future or they're from her past that she forgot about.
Yeah. That's interesting. But they recognize her as the Doctor?
Yeah. I mean, I think she calls herself the Doctor, maybe.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but like they know that she's the Doctor who's their enemy.
Okay. I see.
But
Interesting.
yeah,
Interesting.
they're decent stories. I'm not like they're not amazing, but they're good.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm
That's
glad to
fair.
just have more Joe Martin Doctor, and it's just funny because like she's called the fugitive Doctor, so they're only going to tell stories of her as a fugitive, is what they said, which is just going to be funny
Uh, sure. I guess. No, why not?
because they don't want to do division stories with her, so they're just only going to do her in her fugitive era,
That.
which is.
All right.
I mean, she's only called the Fugitive Doctor because the episode she was in was called Fugitive of the Jadoon. But
Yeah.
then now it's just going to be her defining trait.
I mean, I guess that's like how John Hurt is the War Doctor, right? So,
Yeah.
all right. Fair enough, I guess.
Yeah.
It's a little silly, but I would like to see the potential of that iteration of the Doctor actually get utilized more. And if this is the steps we got to take to it, then so be it.
I know people were mentioning that a while ago she said she has never worked with Shudigawa, and then more recently she said, like, she said some stuff like she had met him, so people are wondering if maybe she is going to show up. Because, like,
Interesting.
she talked about Shudigawa once, like she had never met him, but like he's a cool person. And then
Uh huh.
later on in time, she kind of suggested that like maybe she has met him. So it's
Hmm.
like, and then people looked at like her Instagram posts and noticed that she was like in an airport. I think that was like going to Wales. So people are wondering if like maybe she's gonna show up in the show.
Interesting. Interesting. That would be cool. That kind of reminds me of was it like around season series 12 during Jodie's run as the Doctor, where John Barrowman came back as Captain Jack Harkness that one time in Fugitive of the Jadoon, and then also in the Christmas special after that season. And
Yeah,
there were interviews with him talking, like the first time around he talked about how great it was to work with the companions, come back to the show, but he didn't get to work with Jodie. It's a shame, he would love to work with her. And then like a couple weeks later or something, like not too long later, had mentioned how much he loves Jodie, and like it was great seeing everyone from the Doctor Who team, and everyone's like, okay, so
yeah,
he probably comes back at some point to see her.
yep,
So it kind of feels like that all over again.
yep.
That's
Yeah,
funny.
I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen in this next season.
Me too. Me too. Both in classics and in modern.
Yep. And I guess we should just say that if you would like to join us on our journey through Classic Who, you can join our Patreon. So for just $1 a month, you can get into our Discord and you can get early access to episodes. And for $5 a month, you can watch live as we record, and there will be a text chat where we'll chat with you and you can tell us about how The Wheel in Space is actually the best Cyberman story. But for next episode, we will be starting season 6, and that will be with The Dominators and The Mind Robber. Both of those stories are 5 episodes long, and The Mind Robber does have a Tales of a TARDIS, if you want to seek that out.
Okay.
Obviously, that will spoil the ending for both Zoe and Jamie. But
That's
personally,
true.
I already know how their stories end because I know some vague details about like what happens in the war games. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll probably watch it because like I know what their story or what their ending
Yeah.
is. I feel like their ending's kind of well known among people.
Yeah, it is.
But yeah, so for next episode, make sure you watch The Dominators and The Mind Robber. You can find those on BBC iPlayer or Tubi TV. If you support us on Patreon for just $1 a month, you gain access to our Discord as well as early access to episodes. I've been Joy. You can find me on social media at Joy Content.
And I've been Tris. You can find me on social media at ToonTris.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.